Can you all hear me? Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Now I can hear you. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Board of County Commissioners of Rio Blanco County, our special meeting agenda for the 2025 public budget hearing, November 10th. This meeting will be streamed live on the RBC YouTube channel, and I am calling this meeting to order at 5 o'clock, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a tentative agenda which includes all information available as of October 31st, 2025. The final tentative agenda will be posted at the RBC Historic Courthouse, 555 Main Street, Meeker, Colorado, and at the Rangeley Town Hall, 209 East Main Street, Rangeley. I would entertain a motion on line items C.
Okay, I make a motion to approve for the approval of the November 10th, 2025 budget hearing.
I'll second. I have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Overton,
Aye.
O'Haron,
Aye.
and Scritchfield.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to public hearing, and we will start with the presentation of the 2026 proposed draft budget.
Thank you, Commissioners. You should have your notebook. Lisa, you have your notes there. I could present that also on online. Let me grab my, just found that. I've got my book, but I could actually show that online.
Hi, Lisa.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
We
Yes.
can. Thank you. Hi, Lisa.
So commissioners, we've done the budget book a little bit differently this time because of necessity almost. ClearGov, does the budget book process, changed everything, the way that you put it together. And so Lisa and I spent some quality time trying to make sure that it is presentable. There's last year's budget was probably around 270 pages, maybe, with lots of charts and graphs and pretty things. This one is more back to the basics. It contains all the data that's required. You'll have all the revenues and expenditures. And so I think it's a good solid budget. It will have some pretty effects that we'll add as we go along, but it won't change the figures. There could be some changes going down if you decide you want to do something different as we get close to the very end, but I don't anticipate any major changes to the budget at this point. I guess I would like to start off. Lisa, do you want to start off with where would you like to start? Do you want to start with the transmittal letter? Do you want to start with the revenues, fund balance? What would be your preference to start with? Or do you want me to start with the transmittal letter?
You go ahead and start with the transmittal letter.
Okay. So what I will do is I have a transmittal letter which should be found on page 4 of the budget book. And I'm going to present that here just momentarily. Sean, you will notice that you have 2 books there, one for your office downstairs and one for. Thank you. My share screen here. More time. Okay. So what I will do, for some reason it's not letting me here. One last time. There it is. I'll give it some time. Okay, hope that's big enough that you can see it. I can maximize it in further over here. bigger than that. Do you have both copies there, Sean? Would you mind giving one to Deb? I think she's the only other person in the room that she wants to look along.
Almost not staple, just
Oh,
no.
Just, yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, it is a little more basic than what we've had in the past. So I just wanted to make sure we set the expectations on that. All the data is correct. We spent a lot of time verifying, re-verifying, making sure that expenses and revenues are in their complete and to the best of our abilities. So there could be some minor changes, but I'm not expecting any. So going down to page 4 is the transmittal letter. Basically on that, just to give you some highlights on that, this is for the budget year of 2026. So starting January 1 through December 31st of 2026. The purpose of the budget is it aims to provide fiscally responsible plan that aligns with the priorities set by the Board of County Commissioners. It will serve as the basis for reviewing and refining all departmental requests during budget workshops, ensuring that Rio Blanco County maintains its financial strength and integrity. Once adopted, the budget becomes the legal document that defines the county's financial operating priorities and shaping its organizational structure and services. There are a few key concerns when you're looking at your financial projections. There are several things that Lisa will get into when we start talking about fund balance and that type of thing. The history of Rio Blanco County is we're very strong financially. The commissioners over the course of history have continued to put funds away for projects and for activities and things like that, thinking down the road that we could have a time when things aren't as flush as what they used to be. So at times there is what's called, you're going to be looking at deficit spending at times because we try to balance incoming revenues for that year off of expenditures that year or operating expenses. If you do a project and you say, okay, we're going to build a new thing, a new bridge, whatever, you're actually going back to those previous taxpayers and money that you've set aside for that project. So we will cover those a little bit later on in the book. And again, that is something that, you know, you'll see some negative numbers or basically where we do reach into fund balance to fund the activities, but not the operational costs. We've been very good about maintaining operational costs. One of the other things that was significant this year is our assessed valuations and property tax revenues. The 2024 decrease in the county assessed valuation from $1,015,215,650 in 2023 dropped to $785,213,840. And then we just had a further reduction in 2025 from the $785,213,840 figure to $729,14. Now that is an unaudited figure. That's Renee's belief that that's how close we're going to be. So we think we're pretty close, but there could be some further adjustment to that. And typically that is a reflection of the volatility in the county's primary industries, which are oil and gas, property which comprises 60% of the total assessed valuation, and industry at 18% together with, which accounts for 78% of the county's tax base. These sectors are highly dependent on economic and legislative conditions, which will continue to drive fluctuation in property tax revenues. We have a significant impact, of course, everyone knows, the impact from the Lee and Elk fires. On August 2nd, multiple lightning strikes caused wildfires, including the Elk and Lee and Croshow and Yellow Jacket fires, which burned nearly 155,000 acres combined across Rio Blanco County. While several residents suffered heartbreaking losses of homes and outbuildings, the most extensive impact was to our rangeland and agricultural fields, which are vital to our local economy. The county continues to assess long-term recovery needs. We are awaiting decisions on FEMA disaster funding and have received notification that the emergency watershed EWP funding is pending and expected to help assist us in 2026 with repairs to county infrastructure damaged by post-wildfire flooding. Let's see here. What can I touch on? The budget timeline, I will jump to that. It's on page 7. So for budget preparation, we actually started this process way back in May, got an early jump on it. I was very optimistic. By July, we had already done employee reviews and had those in the books. We had followed the statutory provisions throughout the whole process, and then August hit. And the months of August and September, of course, August with the fire and then September with the FEMA application, really slowed us down. So we didn't get the work sessions completed. We still are within guidelines of statutory timelines, but it just really slowed down the process. I had hoped to have these conversations quite a bit earlier and have everything locked in, but unfortunately we had different plans that happened. So at this point, what I'm presenting to you is a good solid budget. Like I said, it's got all the figures, it's got the revenues and the expenditures. We will add some graphs and things like that to make it a little more visible, I guess, for some folks to be able to see those changes. Then our budget adoption. So I will be noticing that we'll actually have the budget adoption hearing on December 9th, which is a Tuesday at the beginning of the Board of County Commissioners meeting. It will be at 9 a.m. The public is encouraged to provide comment if they would like. Let the record show that there is no public here in the room except for Deb Moreland is here to answer questions. And then online, I'm not sure if we have any public online. Lynn, I don't know, I do see myself on there and there could be one other person on there. I'm not sure. That may be the meeting stream. So don't believe there's any public, but they're welcome to attend the December 9th as well. Is that right, Lynn?
What did you just say?
Is there anyone else on the?
I see only.
I'm one of those. Nope. Okay. Next thing I'd like to point out is so I'm going to jump down to page 15. Demographics did not change, by the way, on the way. So we're talking about the organizational chart. So the reason why I wanted to stop on the organizational chart is last year we had some pretty significant changes, and this year we're going to have some pretty significant changes in the way that the commissioners said just want to restructure for 2026 going forward. The first page on page 15 is the elected officials. So as elected officials, you have the Board of County Commissioners with Commissioner O'Haron as chair, Doug Overton, and Kelly Scritchfield as commissioners. We also have Rio Blanco County Sheriff Anthony Mazzola. We have the clerk and recorder Sean Luce. We have the assessor Renee Nielsen. We have Ronald Waldeck, who is our treasurer and public trustee. We have the surveyor, who is Lee Joy, and we have our coroner, who is Laura Smith. Then underneath that is the Board of County Commissioners organizational chart. So this is purely the business underneath the 3 commissioners that you directly supervise. So on page 16. No, one more. It's a little bit small, but I think you'll be able to see it in the book a lot better than online. Any better. So recently, you guys have given instruction to kind of the way we're going to restructure that reporting systems that come to the commissioners directly. So as county administrator, I'll be over the following departments: CSU Extension, Operations under Eric Jaquez, Community Development, which is Lee Joy, Natural Resources, which is Reese Melton, Human Resources, Laura Smith, and Veterans Affairs, Joe Dungan, and Public Works, Thad White, and the Finance Department. And underneath the Finance Department, we have Deb Moreland, just sales and use tax within the finance area. Right now I do have the county attorney listed as Don Stearman. Don will continue to maintain that until January 1st. And then we will have a new contract attorney. We have the emergency management currently listed under Doug Cup, which in looking at the emergency management statutes, he does need to report directly to the board, not to the county administrator, which is one of those changes we had had originally. Another significant change is that now public health and environment, Michaela Sheridan, will report to the commissioners directly, as will Carmen McKay for the Department of Human Services. So those 5 positions will report directly to the board. So we're still maintaining a good organizational chart, and not originally before, I'm going to go back a couple of years, all of those department heads and directors reported to the Board of County Commissioners, and there was like 35 direct reports that you had. So we still are maintaining that, but it should be a fair distribution. So that is one significant change on how that works. Okay. So now just a little more side history. I'm going to page down to page 20. And we all know how fun government accounting is. This book does explain what fund structure is, how those things are used, and how the different funds work in a synopsis type form. What I wanted to point out for the public is our chart of governmental funds. We have several that do different functions. Our general fund is what we call our Fund 10. We have special revenue funds. Those are number 22, which is Road and Bridge. 23 is Public Health Agency. 24 is Human Services. 26 is our American Rescue Funds. 27 was Use Tax. And 29 was Conservation Trust. I shouldn't say what, those are still those funds. We have 3 capital funds. The Capital Expenditure Fund, which is number 21. 25 is our Capital Improvement Plan. And 80 is our County Capital Improvement Trust Fund, or CCITF. We have several proprietary funds. The first are our enterprise funds, which is 51, our solid waste landfill. 52, our weed and pest, which includes Piance Creek Weed and Pest District and the Lower White River Pest Control District. We have 53, which is our communications broadband fund, and 54, which is the Fairfield Complex. The enterprise funds are the ones that work like a regular business. They have revenue and expenditures, and they're not tied to the county's fund balance, and those funds are ran separately like a business. And then we have our internal funds, which is 60 are central services and 68 are fleet management. On to page 22, I did want to touch on the commissioners have been working on a strategic plan, and we began developing it early this year, January, February, March in that area. We did not get it rolled out as anticipated, ended up hitting a big snag, of course, with the fires. We worked a little bit in July on it, and then of course, everything kind of blew up. We did end up getting back into it and developing that, and I do anticipate that we'll roll out the strategic plan in January of 2026 in as much as we can. It definitely shows some direction and planning, and then we'll use that as our catalyst for going forward. It does make an important step towards documenting a unified long-term vision for county operations, investments, and service delivery. The strategic plan will identify the county's missions and core values and strategic priorities to guide future decision-making and resource allocation. Although the board has not previously adopted a formal strategic plan, Rio Blanco County has always maintained a fiscally conservative approach to governance. Major projects, capital investments, and asset management have consistently been guided by careful consideration, forward planning, and collaborative discussions among the board, county leadership, and public. These efforts have ensured prudent stewardship of public funds and responsible long-term management of county resources, even in the absence of a centralized planning document. The 2026 budget was developed prior to the adoption of a formal strategic plan. It reflects that same fiscal discipline and practical oversight that have long characterized the county's operations. Once adopted, the strategic plan will provide a framework for aligning future budgets clearly with defined priorities. And the other part to that is, if we stay with ClearGov and Clear Plans, they have upgraded so that we will be able to do more of an import on a monthly to quarterly basis. So you'll see where those figures are. That was one of the reasons we wanted to get that strategic plan into place. But we will work through that process in January and February, hopefully to tie those two together. I know Commissioner Scritchfield has always wanted to be able to see how are we doing with the budget and being able to match that with our in-code processing, which is our CMS processing, to what we actually see in our budget. So hopefully that will go smoothly. We'll get down there. Okay, so at that point, I'd like to go ahead and move down to page 26, which is on fund balance. So Lisa, can you take it?
Okay, so fund balance. I was going to look at this in terms of the whole fund, so can I share my screen?
You can. I will stop sharing and you can share yours.
Okay. Okay, so there's the ClearGov website. I'll start with, okay, I'll expand this a little bit. So what we did is we reconciled what's in the budget, the going through the budget process. So what I did this weekend was reconcile the fund balances with the 2026 budget to make sure that they're accurate and carrying forward correctly. And use fund balance in the budget process as part of the sources for what you can use for the particular coming year.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Lisa,
Yes.
you sound like you're underwater. We're having a really hard time hearing you.
You need to get a little closer to the mic or something.
Yeah, let me see. It might be.
Kelly, are you having a hard time hearing her? Is it on our end?
Can you hear me better now?
That's much better.
Yes.
Much better.
Okay,
Yes, thank
All right.
you.
I'll use the AirPods then instead of the fancy camera. Okay, so can you see everything okay as well?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. So beginning fund balance up here across the top is used as a source in the budget. So the 2025 projected fund balance, beginning fund balance is $38 million, and that's what you had in fund balance at the end of 2024. And then you take those projected amounts, go down, you take revenue, expense, and the difference, and that ends up adding to fund balance. What we're projecting for 2025 is $64,195 being added to fund balance for a total beginning fund balance of $38,710,000 for 2026. We've also included the 2025 adopted budget, so you can compare that to what we're projecting for the end of 2025 and 2024 actual, so that you can see how we actually ended up, what the audited numbers were for 2024. I've also included 2023 here so that you have some context and can see if 2024 was an outlier or if it was in line with what has happened in previous years. So you have 2023, 2024, 2025 projected, and then 2026 budgeted and 2025 budgeted. In the general fund, as we've discussed before, one of the big differences between the budgeted revenues and what the county actually shows in the audit and in the projected numbers are those revenue items that have been either conservatively budgeted in the past or not budgeted at all because you're unsure of the amounts. So PILT, the federal mineral lease revenues, and the severance are not included in these intergovernmental amounts up here. So you see big variances between what was adopted for 2025 and what's being adopted for 2026 and what you had as actual revenues in those years. This year, the severance, federal mineral lease, and the PILT come out to about $2.1 million. So that's just about that entire difference there. Another place that has been a little bit conservatively estimated has been the interest earnings. So the 2025 budget and the 2026 budget have both estimated that there will be $1.3 million in interest earnings or investment earnings in that fund for the year, but actual amounts have been much larger. So in 2023, it was 2.1. 2024 actual was about 3.2. And then the 2025 projected is probably conservative too at about $2.1 million. So there's about a $4 million difference between what was adopted for 2025 and what is projected for 2025. And then 2026 is up a little bit. So it's about $11.1 million, but it's still probably conservative. Expenditures in this top part are by their natural classification. So you have things like wages, professional services, fleet management charges, those types of expenditures are all listed here. And you can compare those across the years as well. One thing that does get included in the budget is the contingency. So the contingency has typically been a pretty large number, and this represents expenses that are included in the budget as contingent expenses. But if the staff or management of the county wants to use those funds, they would still need to go in front of the Board of County Commissioners and get approval to use those funds for the county. This year, the budget for that dropped a little bit. Last year, it was about 1.2 million. This year, it's 996,000. Let me see if there's anything else to point out there. You can see that in 2025, the budget included using fund balance of about $5.2 million. In 2026, that's cut back to about 2.6 million. And a lot of that is transfers to other funds. And I think I've got a fund balance schedule that I'll show you how that breaks down too after I go through the funds here. And you can see, I think each of the years the county has budgeted to dip into fund balance a little bit, and then they've come out ahead at the end of 2023 and 2024, and they're expected to come out ahead again in 2025. We also included for the general fund the revenues by department. Since the general fund has so many different departments that operate as their own kind of little agencies, I've included that here so that you can see how the revenues compare across the 2025 budget, the 2026 budget, and the actual numbers. Again, those other federal revenues like PILT, federal mineral leasing, and severance all are shown as revenues in the BOCC department, and that's why you have these fluctuations here. The treasurer's department shows that interest income, and so you've got some fluctuation there because of the conservative way that interest income has been budgeted. And then expenditures by department are down here too. You can see how each of the departments has compared to what was budgeted for them. So again, expenditures are expected to be under budget by a little over $1 million this year. And some of that, again, is because you have those contingency funds that you're not using in their entirety. And so that creates a variance from budgeted expectations. And then down here, you've got a brief summary of fund balance across the years. Fiscal year 2023 ended with $32 million in fund balance. 24 was $38 million. Fiscal year 25 is expected to be about 38 million again. And then fiscal year 26 in the budget is expected to be about 36 million. And I can, let me see, where did I put that? And can you see this okay? Or do you want me to put it on the, maybe I'll put it on the slideshow so you can see it. This is how the fund balance breaks down for the general fund. So the 2026 budget, I did some estimating here. I estimated that you'd again have about $800,000 in restricted fund balance in the general fund for Tabor. And that's based on, yes.
I don't think if you change screens, we're still on ClearGov.
Okay, let me see.
You'll have to stop sharing and share your other screen. Sorry.
Oh, it's on the same, what a pain. Okay, are you seeing?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you seeing the general fund balance? Okay.
Yes. Now we are.
So this is where I broke it out with the 2026 budget, the 2025 original budget, and the actual balances from your 2024 audit. So Tabor is about 3% of your fiscal year expenditures. It's really based on the total revenues for the fund every year. And I estimated about $800,000 for that restriction. Non-spendable fund balance are just those things that aren't in a cash form that you can spend. They're typically inventory and prepaid expenses, which are pretty small for the general fund. So I estimated about $20,000. The electric sales tax grants are those monies that the BOCC uses to grant to others. And we keep track of how much is in that. And it's included as an assigned balance because the county commissioners have said, we want to use these monies specifically for a certain use. And so they're included in the assigned fund balance. You have the extension program activities, future capital projects, which are very small in the general fund this year. Projected budget deficit, would it be included in assigned too? And that's how much you're showing in 2026 that you're going to dip into fund balance in the budget. And then under unassigned, you've got $7.5 million for future funding stabilization. And this is a balance we've talked about before, where it's something that was set aside in previous years as an amount that the county commissioners determined that they wanted to keep available in case of emergencies, in case the county actually needed those monies for something catastrophic happened, either in the economy or in the local environment that you would need that money. So they've held on to that. Working capital is about 3 months of operating expenses that you want to keep on hand. So you take basically the total operating expenses, calculate how much you use per day, and then find out how many 90 days or how much money is needed for 90 days of operating expenses, and you get 3.2 million. The remaining fund balance is 21,462,636 in the 2026 budget. And that represents money that's available for whatever purpose the county commissioners deem that they would like to use it for the county. And that represents about 660 days of fund balance on hand. So you could cover your operating expenses for about 660 days on that remaining fund balance. So does that make sense? Or does anybody have questions on that so far?
Good so far.
Okay. So maybe I'll go through these other two while I have them up, and then we'll go through the funds. Road and Bridge Fund is the same. This is how it breaks out. Your restricted balances in Road and Bridge are for those Forest Service Title III projects, and it's a very small amount. It's carried forward for a long time, or for several years anyway. It's about $10,000 in the 2026 budget. Inventory is a big part of Road and Bridge, and I kept it the same as the prior year, about $1.2 million. Deposits and prepaid expenses are about $382,000. The working capital, which is 3 months of operating expenses, is 2.1 million. And then the general purpose of the fund is about $3.7 million. So that committed general purpose of the fund amount of 3.7 is what's available for the county to use for whatever purposes they deem necessary. These future capital projects that you see here in the 2025 original budget is how much, I believe that's how much currently the Road and Bridge Fund is expecting to dip into fund balance next year for projects, or it's the projects that will be happening in 2026. So I think when we look at Road and Bridge, you dip into fund balance a little bit this year. And part of that is those $5.6 million in projects that will show up as a use of fund balance when you look at your 2025 financial statements next year. Human Services, the Department of Human Services, they also, in 2026, I think they, for a while, it looked like they were going to be dipping into fund balance, but now it looks like they might actually have a surplus in the 2026 budget. But this is how their fund balance breaks down. So they've got just a small amount of non-spendable fund balance. The restricted balance they have is for the collaborative management program. And that's money that the state has provided to them ahead of time, that has been rolling into fund balance and will be spent in future years. So they could dip into fund balance to use those restricted funds. And then there's about $1 million that's there for the general purpose of the fund. And then the use tax fund, non-spendable is very small. There's about $4.5 million that's available for the general purpose of the fund. And the days fund balance on hand, if you just look at the operating expenses for that fund, there's about 1,500 days of fund balance on hand in the use tax fund. So, and from what I can tell, the use tax fund is available for whatever the county commissioners would like to use it for. It's not restricted by any outside requirements as far as I can tell. And I'll try to get back to ClearGov. Okay. Let me get over here. Okay, this is how the Road and Bridge Fund looks for this year. As you can see, the 2025 adopted budget plan to dip into fund balance by about $919,000. It looks like they're going to come out ahead just a little bit or break about even. And part of that is just projects that didn't happen this year. I think they were expected to do more on, I'm trying to remember, maybe the Burke Bridge. And that project didn't advance as far as they expected. And so that's just the project's not going forward is the reason for that difference between adopted and projected for 2025. The 2026 budget expects to use about $3.8 million in fund balance, and it looked like you have the County Road, I think it's the County Road 77 bridge project that's the Anschutz one, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you're showing for that project, you're showing some grant revenue up here in 2026 of about $2.6 million. And then the construction for the grants going to, or for the bridge is going to be down here in capital outlay. So those match each other, but there are additional expenses in here for two other bridges, I believe, the Burke Bridge, and you'll have to remind me what the other, yeah. So those are both
Council or
included.
County Road 17.
Okay. So those are both also included in this large balance of $5.6 million. And that's what I included as future capital projects when we looked at the fund balance amount too. So you'd be dipping into fund balance by about $3.8 million. And then you can see fund balance down here at the bottom. And in that final budget book, we might be able to put in additional information to additional detail about what these assigned, committed, restricted balances are made up of. So let's go to the, this is the Department of Human Services. So this is how they've come out across the years. It looks like they are expected to dip into fund balance for 2025, but in 2026, in that budget, it doesn't appear so far that they'll be dipping into fund balance. And I still need to check with Carmen and see if there are any changes. When I talked to her last week, I don't think there were any known changes that needed to be made to the budget for DHS. Their fund balance at the end of 2026 is expected to be about $1.2 million. And then use tax fund. This is the use tax funds budget. And the 2025 adopted budget and the 2026 budget amounts are pretty similar. There was about $1 million expected in the 2025 budget. It's projected to have about 1.3 million. And then the 2026 budget is still at about $1 million. And then, as we noted, fund balance is very healthy in the use tax fund. And then I did include some department information down here for use tax as well. So just the general use tax admin, it's budgeted for about $890,000. White River Roundup, $183,000. And then Columbine Park, just a small amount of $5,000 is in the budget for revenue. And then the expenses are listed down here. And they're pretty similar, in line with the prior year, so no big changes there. Under the use tax and the expenditures, those are transfers out. So they're still budgeted, I think it's $100,000 for the capital expenditure fund, maybe, and $150,000 for weed and pest control. The capital funds. So the capital funds here, there's a transfer in of $400,000, and this is from the American Rescue Plan to be able to cover the capital outlay expenditures in that fund. Beginning fund balance for 2026 is very small. They've really whittled down fund balance in that fund. And 2026 is expected to end with about $28,000 in fund balance. A capital improvement plan fund. Intergovernmental revenues in this fund this year are primarily from, I believe, FAA. Is that correct, Vicki, for the master plan?
Yes. That
the
is for the FFA, yeah, did approve that, and CDOT approved us bumping that from 2027 into 2026. So that would be for the
Okay.
Rangeley Airport Master Plan.
Okay. So, and that one has a pretty healthy fund balance due to transfers in from the general fund, and some intergovernmental grant funding for the overlay project, out there, out at the airport. Okay, so the American Rescue Plan Fund, all the money that will be left in that for 2026 will be the LATCF funds. The SLURF funds, that were that really restricted piece of the recovery funds that the county received, will be spent by the end of 2025. They're just nearly completely spent at this point. So all that will be left is LATCF, and there's really a significant amount of that money left. So ending fund balance in that fund is projected to be about $1.4 million. That's all LATCF money and interest money that has come in on those funds that have been sitting there for the last couple of years. And so far, there's only $400,000 that's been budgeted to be a transfer out to the capital expenditure fund. So that $1 million is still available for projects that the county would like to use it for. And I think the only restriction on that money is that you can't use it for lobbying. So it can be used for just the general purposes of the county as you see fit. And here you can kind of see what was budgeted for American Rescue Plan and LATCF, which are the two departments in this fund. So there was about $248,900 that was spent in the current year for that. And then LATCF, there was about $2.9 million. And they used a lot of those funds for, I think, a GPON refresh and security camera upgrades in 2025. Public Health Agency. This budget is staying pretty consistent with this year's projected amounts. So the 2025 budget was about $687,000 in revenues. It's projected to have about $510,000, I believe. It'll dip into fund balance as projected by about $3,000, or it will remain pretty flat, I think. And then the 2026 budget shows about $532,000 in revenue and about $556,000 in expense. And I think the big decrease in the budget amounts between 2025 and 2026 are the immunization grants. So you don't have that COVID grant money that's being budgeted like it was in previous years. That's just going away. And then fund balance in that fund is about $589,000 as budgeted in fiscal year 2026. At the end of this year, it's expected to be about $537,000. So it's a pretty healthy fund balance for that little fund too. Let's see. Conservation Trust are those lottery monies that come in that have to be used for parks and recreation and conservation, basically. The county hasn't spent very much of that money over the last few years, so there's about $39,000 available at the end of 2025 that's been budgeted for 2026. And I think that I believe it's expected to be used for fairground projects. Is that correct, Vicki?
That is the proposed option, is that we use those for a project, one or two projects, small projects, or add those with other funds to get a significant project done. This one is Conservation Trust is limited You can't spend it for anything except for outdoor recreation, public benefit. It's the state lottery proceeds to local governments for the acquisition and development and maintenance of parks, open space, recreational facilities. Eligible uses include capital improvements and maintenance of public recreation sites such as playgrounds, trails, and open use spaces. So it can't be used for operating, can't be used for events. It's got to be spent with that accordance. So it would make sense to use these funds first, since you can't spend them on other things, and then use your other funds for that have more liquidity.
So could this be something that goes towards those restrooms that we're looking at?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And this fund typically doesn't, it tends to just roll over and stay in there. Very rarely have the commissioners used it. They did use it back to do the panels, I think, when Sean Bolton was in office. But it is that state lottery proceeds.
Okay.
Okay, I broke out. So last year in the budget book, the enterprise funds were kind of lumped together, and so were the internal service funds. So we broke those out individually this year. The solid waste landfill fund.
44.
You have it memorized?
Yeah.
And I apologize for jumping around a little bit. I tried to hit those major funds first and then go back and hit some of the more minor funds. So I've been jumping around a little bit.
So Lisa,
No, I was just giving Vicky a hard time.
Lisa, this is Callie. If you could give us, or somebody could tell me page numbers where I can't see very good on my phone, it would be
Oh,
helpful.
okay. Okay.
It's 44, page 44.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the solid waste landfill. The budget for revenues has stayed pretty flat between 2025 and 2026, and the projected amounts, I think we kept the same too, between what was adopted for 2025 and what's projected for 2025. We're not expecting it to vary, I don't think, materially from what was budgeted. And so at the end of 2026, ending fund balance is expected to be about $5.3 million. I think you're also expected to dip into fund balance by about 863,000, and that's due to some capital outlay. And I'm not exactly sure what's all included in that capital outlay. Vicki, do you know exactly was it a large piece of equipment that I remember correctly, or
No,
way
it's
stations?
it's to redo the way station is for a big part of that. And I believe the quote came in a little bit higher than what we anticipated, and I have that somewhere here. Get to that. And then 100,000 of that would be for a new truck so let me just take off. So there is 100,000 of that total amount that would be used for a new water and fuel truck for out there. The one that they have is has a lot of high mileage and isn't making the grade. The other piece of that would be a passenger 4-wheel drive type truck, a smaller SUV truck that would transport the people back and forth to solid waste landfill and any other errands and things that they have to run. Those old vehicles are old enough that we'll just be getting rid of those. And then, Doug, is there something I'm missing on that?
It might be a little misleading to say that it's a water and fuel truck. It's just a 3/4 ton truck that carries water and fuel.
Yes, it's like it hauls
Yeah.
everything back and forth since there aren't the facilities out there.
Just to pick up to get back and forth.
Yes, one heavy duty one and one very light duty.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. But fleet will not be increasing size. So they'll be getting rid of those older vehicles that we can't seem to use.
You've also got fund balance information down here at the bottom. The non-spendable part is an estimate of what the net capital assets are that are held by solid waste at the end of the year. So that's about $800,000. And then restricted is 1.8 million, and that's for closure and post-closure costs at the landfill, which leaves an unassigned balance of about $2.7 million in the landfill.
A little bit of good news on the solid waste landfill. The most recent estimate from our large commercial waste hauler, they were anticipating being able to be done within 2 years. They've now extended that to 5 years. So that particular revenue stream should not, barring any major changes, should not change much for the next 5 years.
Okay, next is the Weed and Pest Fund. And what page is this on, Vicki, in your book?
45.
Oh, Doug's right there,
45?
45.
Oh, good. So I'm going kind of in order now. So weed and pest, the adopted budget expected to use about $496,000 in fund balance. We're projecting that it will be less than that at about $196,000. I think part of the reason for that is there just weren't as many, you didn't have the cricket problem this year that you expected, and so costs were a little bit less there. And then in the 2026 budget, they're expecting to use about $454,000 in fund balance. And I think that's, if I remember correctly, due to the fires and a lot more weed mitigation needed because of the fires and the burned areas. Am I correct there?
That is absolutely correct. We anticipate it is going to be a heavy weed year. Weed, I'm trying to think what's the name of that weed that's already coming up. Makes it look really green right now, but it will dry out. I think the name of it. Anyways, yeah, they're anticipating that being a bad year for weeds. Noxious weeds too.
And you can kind of see how that breaks down between the county's weed and pest control, Peons Creek Pest District, and the Lower White River Pest District that are both included in this fund. Okay, Communications Fund, which should be the next page, I believe.
47.
Correct.
Mhm.
So the Communications Fund, I think it's expected to be pretty close to what was budgeted actually for 2025. And then the 2026 budget is down a little bit from 2025 in expenditures, and down a little bit in revenues too, but expected to break about even in fund balance. And the 2026 projected ending fund balance would be $2,094,000 in that fund. When you look at, I'm sorry.
Oh, Sean was just coughing. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. One of the differences that you see in these enterprise funds too is that depreciation expense doesn't get budgeted. So you have these differences because when you go out and do the audit and issue the financial statements in accordance with GAAP, then you include depreciation expense that does not get included in the budget. And in the actual financial statements, capital outlay expenses aren't included because they're generally capitalized and then depreciated over time. So those are the small differences there with enterprise funds. The Fairfield complex, it's expected to be pretty flat with prior years. I think that budget didn't change very much. The big change in that fund was in central services, and that was for increased insurance costs in the next year. Ending fund balance at the end of 2026 is expected to be about $2 million, but most of that is in this non-spendable category down here for the value of the assets. So the actual amount that's available for spending, the unassigned amount, is expected to be about $194,000 in that fund.
We're gonna not have something blow up.
Mhm.
You've got Central Services Fund. And this fund accounts for shared expenses across departments and across the funds. So I've listed those across the top. Their insurance, that's the biggest category. Audit fees, some internet access, and some other little costs that are shared by all of the funds. So the interfund charges are what all of the other funds are contributing to central services to cover those costs. And then these are the individual costs listed. The biggest one being the insurance at $811,000. And then ending fund balance there is expected to be about $129,000 at the end of 2026. And there's a little breakdown down here. Here's the Fleet Management Fund. Fleet Management has budgeted to go into fund balance to buy capital assets. I think they did in 2025. I think they did in 2024 too, but then didn't too much. They went in to fund balance a little bit in 2024, but not as much as expected. In 2025, they have not dipped into fund balance or bought the capital assets that they expected to. And again, this is just projected, so it could change between now and the end of the year. But next year, they're expecting to dip into fund balance again by about $1.3 million, which would leave about $5.5 million in fund balance for fleet management at the end of 2026. I don't know why I have that changed. This non-spendable amount would be an estimate of the net capital assets at the end of the year. And I just took a depreciation amount and applied it, which is probably a little bit conservative. There are probably more, it'll probably be a larger number than that. But the unassigned amount available to be spent is expected to be about 1.5 million in that fund. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I'm good.
Okay, well, I think that's all that I have. Did you have anything to
Thank
add,
you.
Vicky?
No, we've, at some point, just need to confirm if there's any other numbers that we need to adjust by, but we'll have those conversations. Starting on page 51, it talks about the capital projects and those outlays. In previous discussions, we had talked about those being the projects that we would carry forward, but just let you know if there's something there that you want to change. But other than that, concludes the presentation piece, unless you have questions.
No, I don't have any tonight.
Okay.
We wore you
And
down
Lisa,
with that
if you could-
day-long meeting.
I know.
Our brains are fried.
It's been dry, but if you could stay on for a minute after we end the meeting, Callie and I would just like to ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
Are we done? All right. So I know on here it says that the final public hearing is Friday, December 12th at 9, and I think you made a different announcement, so just want to reiterate that that's on the 9th at 9, or do we want to do it at 8?
We could do it at 8 if that would be easier.
Because-
Because of those other.
Yeah.
things that She's already got
The
going.
Okay.
vulture and all of that. maybe.
Callie, are you fine with moving that to 8 in the morning?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Okay, we'll set it for 8. That'll be perfect.
So just want to make that announcement that is now December 9th at 8 o'clock will be our final public hearing on the budget.
And that will be also the adoption of the budget and the levy certification and all that fun stuff. But those resolutions will all be on that part of the meeting.
Anything else for the good of the order? We will adjourn at 6:08. Thanks,
you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.